Yeah. Aaron, you gonna say something? You sound like you were.
No, no, no. I'm just sitting back and enjoying the ride. Really.
I heard you inhale
I
sharply.
I do have some questions that I went to the Tesla Effect group on Facebook and let them know that we were going to have this podcast. And so I when I was down in Salt Lake City and actually got to see everything, I mean, you were right in the middle of crunch time, obviously, but basically when I was there, all my questions that I would have had were asked, at the time. So I asked them if they had any questions for you, and I'll probably pop those in every now and then. The first one, and this may be like a little bit out of order, so to speak, because you're talking about bringing the game up and actually getting it released. But the first question that was asked to me was, do you plan on continuing to support Tesla Effect well after release? Like, are there going to be more patches forthcoming, or possibly additional content that you didn't have time to get into the final release product?
Well, yeah, we obviously are fixing problems as we find them. Some of the problems become a little bit more problematic in that we may not have the current setup of computer that they have, or set up with their minimum requirements, and some of these things are difficult to find, but we're making a valiant effort to. I mean, there were some audio problems that we were having, and they were able to track those down, and that will be patched here shortly. Things like that, we're making sure that we're trying to take care of problems as we find it and as we're able to solve them. The downloadable content's a kind of a tough issue, because when we originally did the Kickstarter, it was, overwhelmingly we had people saying, no DLC. We don't want you to leave certain elements of the game out and then come back and try and charge for that, which I get. So, there really aren't any plans for that, just because, when we did the Kickstarter, we basically agreed to that. So, whether there's additional content that relates to it, or maybe, outtakes or something like that, we could certainly look at that. But from the game aspect, we loaded that up about as much as we could possibly do. And, 3 paths and everything, we tried to cover every base and build it as the text game that we wanted it to be. And like I say, it stretched us pretty thin to do that. I mean, it was not easy getting into this and saying, okay, we have this much money, how are we going to make it happen? And as you know, Aaron, I mean, we kind of started out and said, we can go this far, but the production staff just said, we don't think that's going to be satisfying enough for the fans. And so, we stretched it out much further, and it is a big game, and but it really did push us to the max. So there really isn't a lot of content sitting around. We filled it up as best we could.
Oh yeah, that is definitely true. there is a lot of content to be had in the game, for certain. Yeah.
So I am curious. I want to back things up a little bit. You're jumping into this role as Tex for the first time in a long time. How did it feel reprising that?
It's interesting because when we were doing it the first time through, and we had done 5 games previously, and it was pretty much an evolutionary process. I mean, it just started out as, somebody stand in for this character, and we'll, here's the photo, and we'll stick it in the game, because that's about all you could do. So you were just a face, and I'm handy, so we did that, and then we took it to the next level, which is we had a product called Real Sound, so we could put some voice in there. And, so I did that. So again, as we moved through the process, it just kind of slowly sucked me in to being the character, because A, I was around, and B, I love the genre of private detective movies. So for me, it was like, yeah, this would be fun. And then when Aaron came on board, Aaron Connors, our writer, he started when we were doing Under a Killing Moon, which, was in essence, pretty much full on acting to a degree. We started working on the character and saying, well, how do we want this character to be? And so he basically built in some elements of myself into it. And then, we we pushed it out to, well, we wanted to feel like a Bogart or a Robert Mitchum kind of character, so we'll have elements of that in as well, which, because I was so familiar with it, it was easier, it was easy for me to do to a degree. But as we got to the next one, Pandora, and then we brought in Adrian Carr, he was able to kind of temper it a little bit more, so it wasn't maybe quite as over the top. And working with the director, it was a little easier for me to kind of take on the role. So again, with the evolutionary process, it was very interesting. And then with all this time off, there was kind of a chance to look back on the character and say, I like these things about the characters, and I was comfortable doing this, and I think this worked, and I don't think that worked. So by the time I started up, I had a pretty good idea how I wanted to move the character forward, but it was a little difficult in the beginning, massaging those acting muscles or becoming familiar with it. But I think the Kickstarter allowed me to kind of get back into that role without actually doing the pieces that I was going to do in the game, or do the full-blown acting. I was able to kind of gradually work myself into it. And so by the time we started, I was fairly comfortable with it.
Yeah, quick addendum. Speaking of, the character of Tex, sort of evolving, this game, to me, Tesla Effect, to me, it seems like it marries Under a Killing Moon and the Pandora Directive a little bit. Under a Killing Moon was always funnier, but it was harder to take seriously, whereas Pandora Directive was more serious, but the humor was toned down a little bit, at least in terms of, the story and so forth. There were plenty of, obviously, quips as, Texisms as he, checks out his environment. But this is the first game, to me, that effectively married the two together. Like, Tesla Effect has a lot of silly moments, very, very, very funny stuff. But it also has some really, really serious and touching stuff in it. And if I have a question, it would be just to ask, and I think you may have already answered this, but how did you strike that balance?
Well, again, I think it was the chance to go back and look at, all the work together and say there were things that I definitely liked about the character in Under a Killing Moon, and I said, I think we've kind of gone away from that, and I think by Overseer we'd gone even further away from the character. And I said, but I don't necessarily think that's a good thing. I think there were things about Tex, as the more innocent, gullible, idiot savant that needed to be part of his character, but that wasn't his whole character. And so, if that had been the whole over-the-top Tex Murphy, I don't think it would have been as interesting. But we needed to, integrate this other side that made the relationships feel more genuine. And so there had to be this way of relating to the character as just a human being and not a clown, that we had to make that connection. So, I think the scenes with Chelsea is, there's some deep, there's a deep emotional bond there. And I didn't want to overplay that, with a bunch of stupid shtick. But there were moments that are Tex moments, which are, he does bumble his way around, and I didn't want to lose that. And so, it really was a conscious effort to combine those two. And, I'm glad that you saw that, bringing back some of the innocent bumbling of Tex Murphy, but combining it with a little bit more maturity and, a genuine emotional resonance with some of the key characters.
So what is the process for making an FMV game? Where do you start off? How do things progress?
Oh, man. Well, the problem is you're really making a movie and a game. And so, and the movie is not 2 hours long. The movie is 6 hours long. And it requires all the effort that you would normally put into a movie, only, multiply it by 3 or 4. And so, because again, it has to feel interactive. You have to feel like you're in control. There have to be choices that are going to be made. So on the surface of it, it is an interactive movie, but at the core, it's still a game. And so you still have to build an adventure, a true adventure game there that basically, has has an interesting, gripping story and a mystery because it's a detective in the detective genre. So you have to have that core mystery that keeps people guessing all the way through. So really, it's almost, you know, a mystery book, an interactive movie, and an adventure game combined. And frankly, it was so much work. It was a killer because frankly, you know, I'd forgotten how much work it was to do Pandora. I mean, we did Overseer, but Overseer was kind of almost a one-off because it wasn't what we would consider the core that we were after, which was like Pandora. We had the multiple paths and, you know, kind of this bigger epic story. Overseer wasn't quite to that level, and that was the last one that we had done. And then we had done some casual games in between, which, you know, are like cake compared to this one. So, like I say, it was very, very difficult because, again, you shot 3 or 4 movies, and then you had the adventure game, and then you need to make sure that it had the intrigue and mystery of a great novel all combined into one, and that is no small task.
I would imagine it's not. So does it start, you start with the script first? Do you start with like a design document that you draw up for everything? Like, where does it all?
Well, where it really started, I mean, was years ago when we had done Overseer, and, you know, we had the cliffhanger, and we kind of had a direction. I mean, basically, we were hoping to do 3 more games, and so this story arc that we had was roughly in both Aaron and mine's head of, you know, of the direction that we wanted this to go. But then it's kind of on the shelf for years, but at least we had a concept. Once we got the Kickstarter money, and then it was for serious. You've got to develop, you know, the script and the story first, because all of that needs to be shot. But on top of that, this time through, we wanted to have the backgrounds done so that when the actors came in, we could make sure that, you know, all the lighting matched correctly. So the environments had to be built to a certain degree. But then on top of that, you know, we had to have the script done. And the script, again, is not just a 120-page script. It's over 300 pages. And so, like I said, all this kind of just jammed together at the same time. You know, in theory, you would start and you would write, you know, the 300 pages and, you know, have all the script done, and then you could, you know, work on the lighting, and then you would bring the actors in. But we really didn't feel like we had time to do that. So it was all, you know, started to overlap each other. I would have loved to have, you know, had the luxury of waiting till we had the script done before we started on some of the locations, but we couldn't wait. We had to, you know, I mean, that's not a lot of money to go around. So you really can't waste any time at all. You can't have, you know, your graphics staff, albeit small, sitting around waiting until the whole script is written out. You know, that could take months, and then, you know, and then you're just losing money every day. So basically we had to, you know, say, okay, which locations are going to be the keys? Let's get started. Okay, let's work on the script. And so at a certain point, then we bring the actors in, which was about 14 months ago. And then you have this intense, you know, 2.5, 3-month period where you're shooting. And like I say, when you're trying to pull 3 basic forms of entertainment together into one on a very small budget and trying to get it done within a reasonable amount of time, it is crushing.
I have another viewer text fan question. Again, this is slightly out of chronological order, and I apologize. But this is about the Kickstarter, and it's something I'm kind of curious about as well. And I'm just going to read it to you exactly the way they worded it.
Okay.
Be honest. Whose idea was it to put Rook in a wedding dress?
Now I remember that. I think that's one of those late night things, you know. It's like 1:30 in the morning, and you're trying to think of all these things that, you know, anything interesting or funny or whatever you could throw in there. And I think that came around after about midnight, where we're just going, come on, let's come up with something. How about Rook in a wedding dress? Okay, let's do it. And pretty much that was the basis of that. You're just desperate for any idea that you think you can milk for any kind of humor, and that was one of those.
It was brilliant. That leads into a question that I had. How much improvisation was there in the shooting? Like, I imagine obviously none, as far as plot points, obviously, but I mean some of the more some of the more humorous scenes and lines of dialogue just made me wonder how much was completely scripted, and if there was any improvisation going on the shoot.
Actually, quite a bit, because the difference is I mean, you write all this and you write the core material, and here's the story that's we got to take care of, and then there'd be something like, we should have a funny bit here. Okay, I don't know what that is, but once we get on the set, okay, we'll work it out. So I mean, things like the when Tex comes in and the guy's got the gun on him right at the beginning of the game, he turns around and busts his head. Well, the reason that worked out is because there's a hole in the wall, but, we were talking about that this shelf moves and then there's a hole in the wall and you go in. Well, he had the bump on his head. And it's like, well, what can we do here? Well, the obvious thing is if he turns around and he goes to run out, he could hit that wall. And so it was things like that all the way through, that once you're there, once you have the actors there, and once you start talking about it and you go, wouldn't it be funny to do this? And then and pretty much it was, yes, we all agree that would be funny. Let's do it. When Holly the hologram is there and Tex sticks his fingers through it, that happened just right at the moment, saying, well, what would he do with a hologram there? And how would we have the reaction? And the smoke off the finger and whatever. Those things happen because once you're free and clear of writing the story and getting the context of it, then you're a little freer to look around the environment and say, well, what could we do at this particular point with these characters in this setup? And somebody will just call something out and we go, yeah, that's funny, let's try it. And it was actually one of the backers who suggested that. Max suggested that, and it was like, okay, yeah, that'll work. Let's give it a try. So yeah, there are a number of things all the way through the game that basically were improvised at the point of shooting.
So were there any scenes in particular that were difficult to film?
For me personally, I have a harder time with the serious emotional stuff. But that's where it's good to have a director who, can say, this is going to work and it's going to be very poignant, and, I'm going to walk you through. So that, there were moments with Chelsea, the female main lead, where I'm going, oh man, I feel a little awkward about this, but he was able to, basically settle me down and say, I really think this will work. Let's play it as straight as we can. These scenes will mean a lot to people, and it's like, yeah, I agree. I just, it's pushing me personally because I'm a little more comfortable in the other environment. And so it was scenes like that were difficult, but I think actually turned out really well. I was really happy with the emotional reaction, and I think that from my standpoint, it's difficult when I'm really up against some of the heavyweights, a Steve Valentine or a June Lockhart or something. I mean, people who are really in the industry, and this is what they do day in and day out. And so it's a little intimidating for someone who is pretty much a novice to go up head to head with them. So it really, for me, when I get in those situations, I really focus as hard as I can on what they're saying and listen very intently, so that my reactions and the way I play it are as genuine as they can be, because these guys, they're just so well trained. You don't want to make it look like if they start rolling their eyes going, where did this guy come from? So you want to be as professional as you can be.
I think you're short selling yourself a little bit there, sir. I have seen and played through all of Overseer, and you had a wonderful couple of scenes with both Michael York and Henry Darrow, and that end scene with Chelsea was just magnificent. Absolutely. In fact, I have a small bone to pick with you. That ending with Chelsea was just so beautiful, just from start to finish. Like I said, Steve Valentine and June Lockhart had literally stolen the show up until that point, which is where you and Suzanne Barnes stole it right back.
Nice of you to say that.
Well, it did. It made me cry. You know, I was just genuinely moved. It was just fantastic. But the bone I have to pick with you is that you had a chance to do it again in the bad Chelsea ending. And your delivery of reading the message to Chelsea was, again, it was beautiful. It was great. But see your face so badly, and you were just turned away from the camera the whole time, and I was like, oh, I felt like that may have been. I don't think Adrian would have let you do that. I think maybe he would have made you face the camera, but I didn't know if that was like a self-confidence issue, or because you say you feel like you can't stack up to these Hollywood types, but I'm telling you from what I've seen, you've got the chops.
Well, for this role, maybe, but I think the Chelsea that other ending really turned out to be a bit of a problem for us because, as hard as you try, continuity can be a problem.
Yeah.
And we had shot an additional scene for that. It was a setup scene that we had, and we noticed as we were watching it that Tex's wardrobe completely changed. And it was like, are you kidding me? We didn't catch this in continuity. This is unbelievable. So really, we had to kind of massage that scene. And that phone call was actually supposed to come earlier in the game when he goes to the Chelsea shrine room, and he calls her, and the number's still active, and it's like her face was going to be on screen, and we were just going to shoot it off the shoulder, but we were going to be looking at an image of Suzanne while he said that. But we had problems with that as well, and so it was really like, how are we going? We need the A- ending, and the other problem is we shot all this material, and like I said, we had 6.5 hours, and then we cut it down to about 5.5 hours, so we took an hour out. But the portions, some of the portions that we took out were continuity for that particular scene. And so it was like, this is not working, and we're trying to force two scenes in that we just don't have room for anymore, the way the game's laid out. And so that was a bit of a kludge to make that happen. So that's really why at that particular scene you just see the back of him, which I think it worked. Although, like you say, it probably would have been more effective to shoot his face, but it really was because right at the end there were so many bits and pieces that we had to get in an order, and we didn't want it just to overwhelm people at that particular time. It just wasn't breathing correctly through there, that we had to make a few adjustments.
All right, so I have a few story questions for you here. So throughout the game, we're led to believe that Tex has been kind of a jerk for the past 7 years. Now,
Right.
what was granted, I haven't played any of the previous games, so maybe I'm missing out on a plot point from another one. But what was behind the choice to turn him into kind of a jerk,
Well,
or to allude to it, I guess?
yeah. Well, I'll kind of allude to it at a higher level, but in Overseer, you see that Tex is having these dreams, and he's dreaming of another time period. He's dreaming of these Fabergé eggs. It's starting to kind of take over his personality at that point. Just touching on it, but that's conceptually where the idea came from. And then the story as it continues here. And again, some of this is at a higher level, and some of it we're making sure that you have to play all three paths to get all the pieces of the story. And so we may allude to certain things on the A path, for example, but you really get the things we allude to really start to fill in if you go on the C path and get the background story of this J.T. Donnelly character. And so really it was a conscious decision to give you bits and pieces of the story as you go, but you had to play all three paths to really get a much fuller picture of the influences. But the idea that there's an object inside the wall at the Ritz that has this power, through psychometry, is emitting some control over Tex to a certain degree is kind of the reason why over those 7 years he becomes a darker and darker character.
Okay, that's cool. I didn't pick up on that at all. I like that. That's interesting. So you're bridging the gap for me. I appreciate that. So the other thing, the scene where he stumbles into the bathroom in Margaret Leonard's apartment and finds her decapitated body.
Yes.
How much damage did you do to your vocal cords with that scream?
That took a few takes, but I was able to kind of massage them all together. But it's my favorite scenes. When we talked about doing that, I mean, it just broke up guys for about 20 minutes. The fact that he was going to scream like a little girl, found this dead body, and completely go out of character of this tough PI, but just into this frightened little guy who just seen the most terrible thing he's ever seen in his life. And frankly, I thought it was one of the great moments of the game.
That was my favorite scene in the game, and I think that was where I was like, you know what, this game is getting dark comedy so well because you take that where it should be horrific, and I start laughing after it. It was awesome.
That was the idea.
I think, Cassidy, you still haven't seen the golf simulator.
No, I haven't had a chance to do that yet.
Do it.
Well, that's pretty good.
That's really good. When we were at the live screening, that bit got the biggest laugh. And it's not by accident.
Matt Van Roon on that, his editing of that and his timing of making it just absolutely hilarious just was perfect.
So who did the makeup on characters like Louis and Mantis?
Who did the makeup?
Yeah.
Or why did we have makeup?
Well, no, who did it?
Gosh, you hit me with a question. Our makeup artist did.
Okay.
I can't remember her name, darn it. I could get that for you. It's just
it's all good. I didn't know if you had like a dedicated person or if like they did it themselves or who was responsible for it.
No, we had a makeup person for the basically the Morlocks and the mutant makeup for those particular scenes. We had someone in for several weeks that took care of that. I can't remember her name.
How long did it?
I feel so bad.
How long did it take to do the makeup for those guys?
Actually, Todd Bridges, it took a while. It took a couple hours to get that. The other guys weren't quite as elaborate. They probably took, about an hour when they'd come in to do the makeup over the days they were here. But Todd Bridges was a little bit more complex, and that took a couple of hours.
Okay. The other Margaret Leonard is one of my favorite characters because she just seems like the nicest person. Like she just seems like somebody's grandma who's just like chasing down Tesla's stuff. Is she an actress or where did she come from? Where did you guys find her?
June Lockhart.
Is it June Lockhart? I'm not familiar with her.
She is the mom from Lassie and a million other things besides. She has been acting forever.
Okay.
Yeah, she was in like Lost in Space for years, and
Lost in Space. Forgot about that.
Yeah, she.
I'm a youngin, so I don't know these things. I guess.
And for me personally, it was really a thrill to work with her because I grew up, watching those basic, the Lassie series and Lost in Space and so many other television shows she's been on. I mean, if you ran an IMDb on her. Very impressive. I mean, she has had a very long, storied career. Her family was also a big show business family. So, yeah, she's got the chops, that's for sure, and she did a wonderful job.
You'll have to excuse my ignorance. I'm a youngin.
Yeah, it's age differences here. That she's more from, she's the mom of my generation kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I seem to recall an interview some time ago where you told someone that if Tex had parents, it would be June Lockhart and Leslie Nielsen. And I can totally see that. That's so perfect.
If we had a chance to get June Lockhart, for me personally, it was, this is great. This is going to be, this will be such a thrill. This is perfect. So for me, it was wonderful.
And is your makeup person Amber Arcuri?
Yes, Amber.
There we go.
Amber Arcuri, yes.
There we go.
Amber.
So what were some of your favorite scenes to film?
For me personally, I like the Big Jim Slade stuff. Richard Norton, great actor, very intimidating. Has been in, the Mad Max series. He was in a lot of movies with Jackie Chan. Is a karate expert. But a great sense of humor, a lot of fun, and I had a lot of fun with him. And I love the people on the street. I mean, it was fun to bring back. I mean, these were guys who've been working with me for years and years. They're Doug Vandegrift and with Louie and with Clint and the guy at Electronic Shop. All these guys that I've worked with for so long. And it was just fun to bring them back in these roles and play against their characters, because it's almost like everyday real life, the way we interact, and to get that chance to have them all be back in their roles again and to do it really was a lot of fun.
Randall Edwards has always been magnificent as Louie.
Yeah, and like I say, Steve Barnes as Clint. I mean, these guys, I thought they were great, And again, they're not people who act for a living or whatever, but they bring a great characterization to the role, and I think it's what contributes to that feeling that Chandler Avenue is a place you'd like to go back yourself and actually just walk around and have relationships with these guys.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Steve Barnes infuses Clint with just the weirdest sense of humor.
Yeah.
I love that about his character.
Yes, I thought it was dynamite. Louie is so sincere. Like I say, Randall Edwards so good at that. And Doug, I've known him forever, and that's just kind of the way our relationship really is. So,
really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
So yeah, that was just great. But again, playing against Steve Valentine, I mean, he was wonderful. He just came in and just did such a sensational. I thought everybody did a great job, and it truly was just a lot of fun this time. Again, because it was pretty much the realization of a dream for me. Regardless of whether you like FMV or not, conceptually, this is what I wanted this form of entertainment to be. That a feeling of here's this world that you would like to be part of, that tells a great story, and is inviting in its own way, but still plays against this universe of a great, intriguing, big mystery. This one achieved it for me. Finally the technology was good enough. The 2K video looked wonderful. Matt Van Roon just did an incredible job. Integrating the backgrounds with the characters themselves. I just couldn't be happier with it. And like I say, maybe a big studio could do a better job or whatever. But when I look at it and I see how much effort they put into it, they put their heart and soul into it, and what we got for the money that we put out. I would put us up against any group up to $10 million to say, could you do this for this price? And I think the answer would be no. I mean, I just think they just did such a special, incredible job.
I'm in full agreement. It's amazing. You had I don't know how many people worked on the game. Just ignoring like the actors and like the production side of it. But I mean, just the game alone. Like, how many people did you have? Like between art, music, the other crew, visual effects. Like 10 people.
Well, if you count part-timers who were on it towards the end. I mean, we had our quality control people, whatever, but really it was a staff of maybe 12 to 15. And I'm going to challenge any studio at any point to say, could you have come out with a product that basically for 13 people full time, could you have done this? And I just don't believe it's possible. I really don't.
Well, the other scene I wanted to ask you about, one of the other characters that Aaron and I were big fans of is Sapphire. Now,
Yeah.
who plays Sapphire?
Again, you caught me without my cast list here, but Sapphire was an interesting evolution as well, because when Aaron had written the part, it was supposed to be obviously it was going to be a woman who fooled Tex, into thinking that it was a man, but looked just like a woman. And so Tex was going to be completely blown away by the fact that this person is a woman, or a man. And but when it was casting time and these people came in for the role, again, wonderful guy comes in. He's nearly as tall as me. With his hair, he's taller than me. It's like,
He was huge.
this is Sapphire. This is it. Texas, this is, this is going to be someone in the neighborhood that Tex, talks to, and because this is the perfect foil right here. We are using this person. So everybody else got sent home. We're using him, her for this role because this is hilarious. And so, it was just one of those great moments where you go, we're doing this. And I thought it worked perfectly.
Okay, so for the listeners at home who don't know, Chris Jones is no shrimp. You're what, 6'7", 8"?
6'7".
Yeah, and Nicholas Watts, who plays Sapphire, is about the same height.
About the same height, but had 5 inches extra of hair on top. And then we put her on a box, or we put him on a box, and it was just like, it was so funny when I saw that. I mean, I just said, no, that's perfect. I love this. So it, like I said, one of those golden moments where you dream about things coming together, and that was the role. So yeah, Nicholas was just like, nobody else is getting it. You got the role.
I loved it.
Yeah, I just want to talk, just one question about gameplay. This was something that was shared with some of the other fans, but I was curious as well. Were you looking to make the Tesla facility the most deadly place in Tex Murphy history? I mean, the death traps were unreal. Like, it's every time you thought you were past one section, there's something new. First there's proximity mines, and there's Tesla bees, and then there's the spider maze. Yeah. Did at any point you guys go, maybe this is overkill?
Overkill, yeah, I think that's the appropriate term. The way the game laid out was, I mean, in essence, you start the game, you get to know the characters, you get the front end of the story, and then it begins to work itself more and more into gameplay. So you have the monastery, and then you have the swamp house, and then you have Tesla. And in any Tex game before, there is one level that is going to really, really push you and make you go, I can hardly wait to get out of here. And Tesla was just so ripe with this because, I mean, in essence, it from a game designer standpoint, you couldn't ask for anything better. I mean, here's this guy who comes up with all these inventions, all these weird things that, I mean, this futurist who, had this vision of what the world would be, and then came up with, the inventions with lightning and any number of things. And so it was just like, we can do whatever we want basically in this facility. It would be believable inside of here, but I wanted somewhere that really was a very scary, very difficult place to get out of. And, since it was that last real level before you left the game, it was going to be the tester level. And I think it all came together pretty well, at least from my standpoint.
Yeah, I still have nightmares about Roswell from Pandora Directive. Yeah. But even though in Pandora Directive, in Roswell, you literally have a limited amount of time before something kills you. You're going to die if you don't get out or get rid of it somehow. Tesla somehow seemed more deadly than that. It just did.
Yeah, I think it was, but I think the two cushioning factors for us when we designed it is, first of all, is if you really are having difficulty with it, then here's a step-by-step way to get out of it. And if you die, we're not going to send you way back. We're just going to put you back about 3 steps. But so really all you're talking about is, if I walked through a door and I died, I would just be put in front of that door again, and I would have to figure it out. And we tried to leave enough clues in there so that people could, be very clear as to what they needed to do in order to get through the level. So, yeah, I know it was very difficult, and it is a very big level, but I felt honestly that that's where we needed something that really did establish, the dark side of the game, but also the dark side of Tesla and some of the, experiments and the things that were going on, and how, you have this facility that was attacked and blown up. It's still dangerous. You're going in there, and we're going to put you in that situation, and you better fear for your life, because that's exactly the situation that you're stepping into.
Yeah, no, you'll get no complaints from me. It was one of my favorite parts of the game, largely because it had something that hasn't really been done in a ton of Tex Murphy games. The Tesla facility had some narrative that wasn't delivered via FMV. Like you could look around this facility and you can almost get a sense of the story of the Tesla scientists' existence here.
Right.
From the things that they were working on to their lounge area and all these little touches that kind of told the story without for the first time, without actually filming it and showing it happening. It was just I thought it was a great level. I enjoyed the crap out of it. But then I'm much more of an experienced gamer than perhaps some of the Tex fans. So I mean, even the challenges like getting through the laser beams was not really a huge deal for me. But some expressed a little frustration with that.
That one was rough. I had a hard time with that one.
Again, from our standpoint, it was okay. You're getting close. We'll get you through this game. I mean, we have full hints here, so there's a way to do it. But at the end, you're going to have to push to get the rest of the story. But there are ways to get through it, and so that's kind of how we felt about the design. Is we know you're going to be somewhat frustrated here, but once you push through this step by step, you're going to be glad to be done with it, but also you're going to feel like, wow, that was, incredible. And some people, we may have pushed too hard. I don't know. I mean, it's possible that some of those, with the spider maze, which I love, may have been too much for some people. But to me, it stayed in character with what this facility was and wasn't, it wasn't a maze that was 1,000,000 miles long. It was one room. Granted, you could spend 15, 20 minutes in there doing that and you could get frustrated. But, the sense was you didn't have to go back through that again. Once you were through, you were done. And we tried to set it up so that you felt definite progress as you went through. I'm done with that. Now I move to the 3rd level. Now I move to the 4th level. And so there was a sense that it is hard, but I'm making my way through it.
Yeah, it may have been one of the more difficult parts of the level, but I guarantee you it was the scariest.
Yeah. And to me, if it's a Tex Murphy game, it needs that. It needs that moment of I'm in a 3D world and it feels, I genuinely am afraid. And that's part of the Tex Murphy universe. That's part of the dark side of it. This isn't a walk through the park. I mean, Tex is a real character and he'll make jokes about things. But again, part of the model was, in my mind, was Ghostbusters. I mean, which I think is, one of the great movies of all time, because they're able to combine humor with genuinely scary moments in there. And that in its own way was, in some ways, some of the atmosphere that we wanted to create of, okay, here's this guy and can I take him seriously or whatever, but he can get through it because he has skills, but he is definitely dealing with something that is, epic in nature, but they find their way through it.
So what's up next for the studio? Has anybody expressed interest in doing another Tex game, or are you taking a break for a while?
Well, we're definitely taking a break. Well, we're just waiting to see what the sales results are, whether, there's enough to justify doing another one, whether, from our standpoint, we feel really good about the start, but, the sustainability is the question, and we haven't gone through this for a while. So, we're working with Atlas, and we're trying to work with them in terms of how they do their promotions and do their bundling and all of that. And probably in 90 days, after release, we can really sit down and say, these numbers seem to justify it. Off we go. Or, that was great, and we accomplished our goal, and we're happy about that, and we'll just see what happens. But for the studio as a whole, I mean, Big Finish is tied in with True Golf, and we do golf simulation products, and the guys have moved on to working on the courses and working to upgrade the engine that we have inside that world. And, that will take us a couple of months, mean, the game took about 3 months longer than I was intending it to take. So I'm trying to make up for lost time in the golf world right now as best I can.
All right, great. So I only have one more question for you.
Okay.
Do you wear a fedora just for fun outside of the role?
Yeah, I've got 5 fedoras, and every morning I come in and pick my favorite, and I'll wear that for the remainder of the day. Actually, I've got a little setup in my office. It's, all of this Tex Murphy thing has been truly a labor of love, and for myself, for Aaron, and for all the guys. And again, I think that's why we were able to accomplish as much as we did, is because it wasn't about doing a game. It was about doing something we really had a lot of passion for, that we really loved, and that we really felt like we'd left some loose ends, and we wanted to take care of that. And so, as hard as it got, all these guys were 1,000%, I'll say, dedicated to making sure that we turned out a product that we were happy with, and we did. And and it was because of their passion and the passion of the the Kickstarter fans that all of this was able to be accomplished. And so I'm just so grateful to everyone out there in the Tex Murphy universe, everyone who supported the Kickstarter, to give us this chance to do this one. Hopefully there'll be others, but right now we're just trying to evaluate the results and make up for some lost time. But the point being, there's just so much passion for this, and I just feel like that we were able to take it where we wanted to take it, and I think everybody who was involved with it should be proud of the efforts, whether it be the Kickstarter fans, those who supported us that way, or the team that put it together. It was just in my mind just an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah, I personally would have to agree with that. It so far stands as my game of the year, and I don't really see anything that's going to topple it from that place. But
well, I hope it stays that
way. Well, it's got a pretty good chance. I have one last question for you, and this is something in the nature of a hypothetical. So, if you were to make another FMV game, it doesn't even have to be a text game, but if you were to make another FMV game, how would you push the genre forward? I've been thinking all day well, not all day, but for like a month, about if I were to make the next great FMV game, like how would I innovate? And I have yet to come up with an answer to that, but I'm wondering if it's something that you've thought about. Are there like features or things that you wanted to put into Tesla Effect but you couldn't, or you didn't have the time for? Like, is there anything that you wanted to add if you were to make another game?
That's kind of a tough question, because you're really bound by the technology. I mean, the one thing that has always come up, even since the beginning, is how do you make these environments feel more alive? How do you get more characters that are part of the environment? And that's really where I would try to approach it. But whether the technology is solid enough that you can do that this year or 5 or 10 years down the road is something that would have to be investigated. But it really would have to be, I think, an effort to try and make this world not as much switching between the adventure, the 3D world and the movie world. Try and integrate them more into each other, and that would take a lot more money and a much bigger staff to pull something like that off. Is it possible? I think it's getting close, but it would almost have to play more like a regular movie, only have the interactive choices and have the game elements in there, but try and evolve it into one world. And like I say, whether the next FMV game could honestly do that, or whether that's something that's a couple of years down the road, really would take some deep thinking and having a number of programmers involved with that discussion to see whether that's even possible at this point.
Well, I think you did a magnificent job of creating a living world in Tesla Effect. I mean, I know none of the main characters you talk to on Chandler Avenue, aren't necessarily represented in 3D form. Like I know you can see Rook through the window if you look,
Right.
but I mean, you guys did a great job of making Chandler Avenue feel alive, despite the lack of anybody else on the street with you. So I think you guys did a very good job of reaching for that, but I definitely get what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's really making it totally seamless. Like I say, I think you can do things to make it feel much more alive, whether it's through the audio and people moving past windows and all of that. All of that achieves a certain level of that inside a player's head of saying, this doesn't feel like a dead, silent world, but to really pull it all together. Yeah, that's the trick.
All right, Chris, let's do plug time here. Where can people find you? Where can people find the game? Give me the whole rundown.
Well, they can find it on Steam. They can find it on GOG. If they want to get more information, you check out bigfinish.com, where they could see descriptions of the game. But the big site is Steam and GOG, and those are the locations I'd send to people right now.
It's also available on Amazon and Mac Game Store, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's true.
And for $19.99, that was a great price point, by the way.
Well, that was Atlas, our publisher, just saying, you want to build the audience. And again, a lot of this is all the promotions that Steam normally does, and GOG and some of these other guys at certain times they'll be running the promotions, but they're saying at these price points you can get a lot of people interested in trying out this product, and so as time goes on, I think the price point will become a bigger factor in terms of keeping the product alive and getting new people to try it.
Well, I would certainly agree. I loved the low price point because it meant that I could buy additional copies. For example, I have a copy to give away right now.
Whoa.
Yeah, I have a free copy of Tesla Effect that I'm going to give away, and you just got to get your detective caps on and figure out a teeny tiny little puzzle. If you were under a killing moon, let's say, wouldn't that make it the shadiest moon? If you can figure out how to rearrange the letters and the words "shadiest moon" and into a something that profoundly impacted Nikola Tesla's life. If you figure that out, you can send it in to, where's the address for our podcast? Is it leviacast@leviathan.com?
It is. Or you can tweet one of us. You can tweet Aaron at Pantsless Shorts. You can tweet me at Casty Moser. But yeah, it is. You can get Leviacast. It's LEVIACAST at Leviathan, which is LEVIATHYN.com.
And if all you got to do is rearrange the letters in the word "shadiest moon" to something that had an impact on Nikola Tesla's life. If you get the correct answer, you will be entered into a drawing, and the winner will receive a Steam key for Tesla Effect.
When are we going to announce the next podcast episode?
Well, yeah, next week.
Give them a week?
We'll give it a solid week, yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, Chris, is there anything else you want to say before we let you go?
Oh, but I appreciate you giving me the chance to tell the people about Tesla, and like I say, we're very happy with it, and we're just hoping that people out there will give it a try and see what we're excited about.
Well, really appreciate you coming on. I can totally attest to it. As a person that's never played a Tex Murphy game before, I really, really enjoyed this one, and it's gotten me interested in the other ones as well. So, well done. Congratulations on the launch. Thanks for the experience, I guess.
You bet. Thanks, guys.